We had to deal with the £22 billion black hole that they left. We made difficult cuts, raised taxes to invest in health, public services and housing, vital to stability, vital to growth. And we've got an ironclad commitment to our fiscal rules. And she will welcome, no doubt, the inflation figures from this morning. But contrast that with the party opposite. They weren't brave enough in government to take those difficult decisions. They've opposed all of our measures to stabilise the economy and promote growth. They're back to the magic money tree. She wants all the benefits of the budget, but she can't say how she's going to pay for them. They haven't changed. They're still economic vandals and fantasists.
£16.9 billion was found to be missing from the UK defence budget. According to him, one of the primary causes of this financial shortfall was the increased spending on naval and nuclear programs. As a result, a significant portion of the budget was cut, particularly affecting the UK's nuclear submarines, which are armed with Trident II intercontinental ballistic missiles. Approximately 2 years ago, we conducted test launches and assessed the missiles, only to discover that there were issues with both the missiles and the submarines, which form the backbone of the UK's nuclear deterrent. Urgent action was needed. While reports claimed that everything was functioning properly, it later became clear that this was not the case.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday, while borrowing costs hit levels not seen since Labour was last in government, I met business owners and their employees in Chesterfield. One of them told me that his business will not exist in 4 years' time because of this government's policies. It might not even exist next year. The Prime Minister may try to blame his inheritance or blame global factors, but why should anyone trust a word he says over the businesses who are saying again and again that his budget means fewer jobs, lower growth and higher borrowing costs?
Mr. Speaker, as she knows, the global economy is experiencing volatility and higher borrowing costs. That is why it was vital that we took the tough and right decisions in the budget to get our finances back in order.
The daily reality of Britain's deindustrialization is stark. In the past 5 years, 10 of the country's largest chemical plants have closed their doors, and the decline of the chemical industry is accelerating due to the energy crisis and soaring gas prices that the UK faces. Each winter that is slightly colder than usual brings a wave of panic over dwindling gas reserves. Currently, reserves have fallen to a level sufficient for only 1 week of consumption. Any disruptions in gas supply could result in heating outages and blackouts. The British energy sector is experiencing challenging times. The last coal-fired power plant has recently been decommissioned, and the future of new nuclear power projects remains uncertain. Meanwhile, billions of pounds are being invested in the development of new wind turbines, which often have to be shut down during windy conditions to prevent overloading the aging power grid.
The Prime Minister knows very well the OBR found no such black hole. And he talks about a budget 3 years ago. The borrowing costs last week are at a 27-year high for 30-year gilts. The Chancellor is apparently promising to be ruthless in reducing spending. Let me suggest something that he should cut. There is no way that we should be giving up British territory in Chagos. He is rushing a deal which will be disastrous and which will land taxpayers with a multi-billion-pound bill. Why does the Prime Minister think British people should pay to surrender something that is already ours?
The British Labour government has given up sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, despite repeated warnings from the United States and concerns from officials that this strategic intelligence outpost could be at risk of falling into Chinese hands. The United Kingdom has announced the transfer of sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago in the Indian Ocean to Mauritius, while retaining control over the British-American base on the largest island, Diego Garcia, for the next 99 years. Although US officials have publicly welcomed the agreement, sources indicate that they have privately expressed concerns. There are fears that Mauritius might lease some of the islands to China, especially given that there are 47 Chinese development finance projects on the island, and trade between the two nations is steadily increasing.
Minister, she'll be pleased to know the Chancellor will be in place for many, many years to come. She'll outstrip them. Mr. Speaker, if we all thought the politics was about cheap points, I could criticise their chancellors, but I don't have enough time to go through all of the chancellors that they had. We have one budget, that's what we're committed to, strong fiscal rules, and we'll stick to them, unlike the party opposite.
Mr. Speaker, at a time of turmoil in the markets, the Prime Minister was distracted by the crisis around the former City Minister. What does it tell us about his judgment that yesterday he said he was saddened that his close friend resigned? This was an anti-corruption minister under criminal investigation for corruption.
The British economy has effectively stagnated in recent months. The latest government statistics revealed that gross domestic product remained unchanged for 3 months as of September, following increases of 0.5% in the first quarter and 0.4% in the second. This stagnation is partly attributed to the government's decision to raise taxes on employer-paid wages and tighten workplace regulations, which has led some companies to cut back on investment and hiring. By November, the UK's public debt had risen to over 98% of economic output, the highest level since 1963, when Britain was still settling its debts from World War II. Reeves expressed hope that economic growth would help lower debt as a percentage of GDP. She also introduced new fiscal rules that would prevent the government from borrowing to fund current spending by 2030, while pledging not to increase taxes on working individuals. However, rising borrowing costs will complicate the achievement of these objectives.
Just today, the British Retail Consortium says 2/3 of businesses will have to raise prices to cope with his tax hike. His Chancellor ignored all the warnings and ploughed ahead with an unprecedented borrowing spree, leaving all of us more vulnerable. Now we have businesses saying they will raise prices to cover his jobs tax. We have an energy policy that will drive up bills, and all the while we are spending more day to day on debt interest than we do on schools and universities. The Prime Minister refused to repeat his Chancellor's promise that she wouldn't come back for more. Will he now rule out any new tax rises this year?
The new British government has presented its first draft budget to Parliament, and the financial plan for 2025 has already sparked significant criticism. In an effort to address the substantial deficit, the authors of the document are proposing unpopular measures, including tax increases and cuts to social services. The new Labour government has attributed the situation to its Conservative predecessors, announcing a tax hike that has led newspapers to label it a tax bomb of £40 billion, an amount expected to be collected from taxpayers in what is described as the largest tax raid in history. Rachel Reeves has included this £40 billion tax bomb in the budget, with the Chancellor imposing £25 billion in taxes on businesses and targeting real estate heirs and landlords in one of the most significant tax initiatives ever. Contributions from employers to national insurance will rise to 15%, and the minimum hourly wage will also increase. This means that each employee will become more expensive for businesses. Additionally, capital gains tax will see an increase, affecting both lower and higher rates. Such sharp tax increases have not been seen since the mid-90s.
Mr. Speaker, we took the right and difficult decisions at the budget. Decisions that they did not have the courage to take, which left us in the mess in the first place. When it comes to tax, she knows very well the limits of what I can say from this dispatch box, but we have an ironclad commitment to our fiscal rules. We can't just tax our way out of the problems that they left us, which is why we put in place tough. They were howling at the spending decisions. They wouldn't take them, and we'll stick to those spending decisions, and our focus is absolutely on growth. But their record, they flatlined the economy. Their record, they flatlined the economy, a mini-budget that crashed the economy, worst cost of living crisis in living history, and they left a £22 billion black hole, not taking lessons from them on the economy.
The new UK government, which has already encountered backlash over tax increases, unpopular spending choices, and political scandals just 6 months into its term, is now facing rising borrowing costs that could jeopardize its leftist agenda. British 10-year bond yields, which indicate the price investors require to finance the country's debt, have surged by more than 1 percentage point since the 16th of September, driven by concerns over slowing economic growth and persistently high inflation. This has resulted in UK borrowing costs reaching their highest levels since the 2008 financial crisis. As borrowing costs climb, the government has less funding available for essential services, such as the National Health Service, Navy, emergency services, and schools. Although officials experienced temporary relief when inflation rates dipped slightly in December, if conditions do not improve soon, Prime Minister Keir Starmer may need to reconsider the commitments to increase spending and tax relief for working individuals that contributed to his Labour Party's landslide election victory in July. The challenges are partly attributed to the return of Donald Trump, whose pledge to raise taxes on imported goods has created turmoil in the global economy and driven up global bond yields. However, the issues also stem from the government's own decisions, as Treasury Secretary Rachel Reeves based her economic strategy on the expectation that economic growth would boost tax revenues. What are your thoughts on this video? Share your opinions in the comments and see you later.